Workman. These are our social channels if you'd like to reach out to us. Also, please feel free to email me, like I said. My first book is called Diary of an Apprentice Astronaut. Samantha Cristoforetti spent over half a year on the International Space Station for the European Space Agency, following her lifelong dream of being in zero G, but her story begins very much before that. She invites readers to experience every step of her journey to the ISS as fellow apprentice astronauts. With endless wonder and curiosity, Cristoforetti explores the Earth-side world of training, then boards a rocket for 8 minutes as she jettisons into orbit. When she finally reaches her destination, she discovers the joys and challenges of life in space. This is a very inspiring, surprisingly down-to-earth story about the dedication of pursuing your dreams. This is Climate Change. It's just the facts look at climate change. The numbers tell a compelling story of our planet, as convincing as it is impossible to ignore. It's free of politics or editorializing. It answers questions, distilling essential data on our precious, precarious planet into richly illuminated illustrations, charts, and graphs. Pump. Millennia ago, when we first began puzzling over the mysteries of the human body, one organ stood out as vital, from the origins of circulation still evident in some microorganisms today to the enormous hearts of blue whales. We journey with Bill Rohrbach to beaches where horseshoe crabs are being harvested for their life-saving blood, and under the sea to learn about the world's most natural antifreeze flowing through the veins of ice fish. Deeply researched, engagingly told, Pump is a fascinating natural history sure to be loved by fans of Mary Roach and Bill Bryson. Letter to a Stranger. When Colleen Kinder put out a call for authors to write a letter to a stranger who haunts you, the responses were amazing. They were intimate, they were addictive, they were all in the forms of letters, all written in the second person. These short, insightful essays by today's best literary minds are organized around themes such as gratitude, wonder, farewell. They guide us across the globe and really through the mysteries of human connection. They're beautiful, they're funny, they really are incredible. Collective Wisdom is by the ever wonderful Grace Bonney. She wrote in The Company of Women a few years ago. This is the same sort of format. She has spoken with and had conversations with over 100 trailblazing women describing the ups and downs and lessons learned while forging their unique paths. It celebrates the stories of those who have been there and know the road, from an Olympic athlete and a NASA team member to award-winning artists, activists, writers, and filmmakers. It creates a living, breathing sense of community, a space where all of us can gather, listen, share, and learn. Life Reconstructed is by breast cancer survivor Kim Harms. She combines her own experiences with extensive research and walks readers through the process of mastectomy and breast reconstruction, weighing the pros and cons, detailing the physical and emotional costs, and laying out the questions that cancer fighters need to ask to be their own best advocate. It's compassionate, it's an honest roadmap every breast cancer fighter needs on her journey. And Carrie the Dog is a novel. Bee Seeger has spent a lifetime running from her childhood. The daughter of a famous photographer, she and her brothers were the subjects of an explosive series of images in the 60s. Disturbing and provocative, the photographs left a family legacy of grief felt long past the public outcry and media attention. Now, decades later, both the Museum of Modern Art and Hollywood have become calling, eager to cash in on the enduring interest in these infamous photos. And Bee faces a choice: let the world in, or be financially compensated for the trauma of her childhood, or forget it, leave it all locked away. This is a really amazing story, sort of based on the photographs of Sally Mann. And finally, Patient Zero, from the Masters of Storytelling Meets Science and the co-authors of Quackery. Patient Zero tells the long, fascinating history of disease outbreaks, how they started, how they spread, the science that lets us understand them, and how we race to destroy them before they destroy us. Nate Peterson is a librarian. He was at ALA a few years ago, and this is full of fascinating information, really cool images, a lot of ephemera, milestone scientific theories, and more. And that's it for me. Thank you so much.
Now it's up for me. Hi, I'm Carrie. I am with Hachette. I work with the library marketing team there. I'm very happy to be here. And without further ado, I'm going to jump into the PowerPoint. I Take My Coffee Black. Tyler Merritt's video, Before You Call the Cops, has been viewed millions of times. He's appeared on Jimmy Kimmel and on Sports Illustrated and has been profiled in the New York Times. And the message of the video is really simple. The message of the book is really simple. that the more that you know somebody, the more empathy and understanding and compassion you have for that person. By sharing his highs and exposing his lows, Tyler welcomes us into a world to help bridge the divides that seem to grow wider every day. Next slide, please. In The Gilded Page, we become very aware of how medieval manuscripts have told us over centuries how much power and art and knowledge and beauty are discussed and weighed in those times. So scholar and author Mary Wellesley recounts the amazing origins of these remarkable manuscripts, resurfacing the important roles that women have played in these beautiful manuscripts, the development of the manuscripts. They were grinders, binders, and scribes, and all in between. And in this novel, you really get to see, or excuse me, this book, you really get to see exactly how all of these beautiful manuscripts have come to be. Next slide, please. I'm a huge fan of Sutton Foster. She's a brilliant actress, an amazing performer. If you don't know her, then please go check out Younger. It's a really fantastic show. And this is her book. It's her memoir. And she really discusses how she's gotten through all of these big things in her life. And it's really come down to crafting, from needlepoint to cross stitch to crochet. She really has crafted through the highs and lows of all of her experiences, and she shares a lot of those moments in this memoir. She discusses a lot of things from her past, like her relationship with her mother, her painful divorce that was splashed all across tabloids, and it's really an amazing story. I hope you can find time to take a look at it. It includes a lot of includes some patterns and recipes and some more. So there's a lot to offer in this book from Sutton Foster. Next slide, please. Katie Couric is huge. I'm sure you've heard her name before. She is one of the top female journalists ever. And in her first memoir, she really discusses how she got to where she was and how she became this modern female journalist who's such a heavy hitter in the industry. She has had such an incredible life, and you really get to see a peek into everything from her personal life to some of the biggest interviews that she's done, and it's going to be such an amazing book. She was at Day of Dialogue, if you were available to see her in her panel with LJ Editor-in-Chief Meredith Swartz, then I'm sure you're already very excited about this book. Next slide, please. This is one of the books being published by Legacy Lit, a new imprint being led by Krishana Trotman. Trotman and her team will publish books that give voice to issues, authors, and communities that have been marginalized, underserved, and overlooked. And this is a book that is really important to that imprint and important to all people right now, I think. As an attorney and arbitrator, Faith Jenkins has presided over hundreds of cases and has helped couples avoid and resolve a wealth and drama. She's seen it all, and in this book, she gathers an arsenal of love, wisdom, and advice for women on how to play it smart. She illuminates and often laugh out loud funny in this book. This is an essential playbook that will help your patrons build confidence, generate better results in love, and land a high-value relationship once and for all. Next slide, please. Natasha Lester is a heavy hitter for Hachette, and this is her new book. In Riviera House, a woman unearths a renowned painting stolen during World War II and discovers her lost heritage in this engrossing tale of love and heartbreak. We move back and forth in time between the museum and the art scene of Paris in 1939 and with present-day French Riviera. The novel explores a fictionalized account of the Renaissance spies and the Nazis' theft of valuable artwork that occurred during World War II in occupied France. And it has a robust reading guide that will help to get discussions going for any reading book club. Next, please. Natasha Brown's debut novel, Assembly, draws on her decades as not quite insider on the finance world. Assembly is one about the stories that we live within, those of race and class and safety and freedom, winners and losers, and one woman who dares to take control over her own story. Assembly brings readers into a Black woman's interracial romance with a white man and into her best friendship with a white woman, challenging us to think about the ways racism can be at work even in the most intimate relationships. Natasha will be on the first book first author, first book panel on June 28th at 11:30 Central Time at ALA. So please keep an eye out for her. Next slide, please.
Thank you. Actually, that is your time.
Oh, two more, but you guys will have the PowerPoint and hopefully you'll be able to take a look at them. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Issa Kaban, pronounced she, her. I'm a senior marketing manager at Tor. I'm very happy to be here with all of you today to share a few of our upcoming fall titles from our imprints Tor Forge, Tor.com Publishing, and our brand new horror imprint launching its first line of titles this coming season, Nightfire. Next slide. Real quick, before I dive in, I wanted to call out that you can follow us on social, sign up for our various newsletters to keep updated on all of the latest news and releases from our adult imprints. And now let's get into the books. Next slide. First up, I bring you Under the Whispering Door by TJ Cloon. In his upcoming novel, TJ takes his trademark humor and love of queer romances that readers have come to expect, thanks to TJ's most recent New York Times bestselling novel, The House in the Cerulean Sea, to deliver an all-new tale that takes audiences on a heartfelt journey through the afterlife. For fans of The Good Place, A Man Called Ove, and The Midnight Library, this is the story of a man named Wallace Price, who refuses to cross over following his death. Wallace, unable to leave his life behind, is given 7 days to experience an entire lifetime he missed out on before he has to cross over. And along the way, he meets a ferryman who he can't help but fall in love with. Don't miss this charming romantic tale when it releases on September 21st. Next slide. I fell in love with these characters and did not even realize how desperately I needed this story right now. This is what international bestselling author Tara Jane Anders had to say after reading Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki. For fans of Good Omens and A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, this defiantly joyful adventure is like nothing you've ever read before, filled with cursed violins and queer alien courtship over fresh-made donuts. We meet Shizuka, who's made an interesting deal with the devil. She must entice 7 other violin prodigies to trade their souls for success to escape damnation. She has already delivered 6 prodigies, and when Katrina, a young transgender runaway, catches Suzuku's ear with her wild talent, she has finally found her final candidate. But an unexpected fate awaits Shizuka in a donut shop off a bustling highway, where she meets Lantran, a retired starship captain who came to Earth to protect her family. With her soul literally on the line, Shizuka doesn't have time for crushes or coffee dates, but she can't deny that love just may be in the air, along with the smell of delicious donuts. Readers will be swept away by this tale of chance, fate, identity, and magic when it releases on September 28th. Next slide. Get ready for a queer Sleeping Beauty remix with a Spider-Verse twist, courtesy of USA Today bestselling author Alex E. Harrow. In The Spindle Splintered, readers are introduced to Zinnia Gray as she's about to celebrate her 21st birthday, the last birthday she'll probably ever have. An accident when Zinnia was young has left her with a rare condition, and no one with this condition has lived past the age of 21. Zinnia's best friend Charm pulls out all the stops for her birthday, creating an immersive Sleeping Beauty experience for Zinnia and her guests, complete with a tower and a spinning wheel. But when Zinnia pricks her finger on the spinning wheel, she is transported to another world and crosses paths with an actual Sleeping Beauty, just as desperate to escape her own fate. An entertaining, fierce, funny, and feminist ride. Look out for Spindle Splintered on October 5th. Next slide. My fellow horror fans out there, this one is for you. I'm thrilled to introduce you to Katrina Ward's The Last House on Needless Street, our very first title releasing from Tor's brand new horror imprint, Nightfire. This one is perfect for fans of Gone Girl and The Haunting of Hill House. This is a sinister tale of secrets buried in the deep, dark woods that haunts a family of 3 living in a boarded up house on a dead-end street at the edge of the wild Washington woods. The buzz surrounding this book is endless, with one of its early supporters, Stephen King himself, calling Ward's novel a true nerve shredder that keeps its mind-blowing secrets to the very end. Just in time for Halloween, The Last House on Needless Street darkens store shelves on September 28th. Next slide. And last but certainly not least, I'm closing out this presentation with a dazzling debut, She Wouldn't Change a Thing by Sarah Adlaka. When 39-year-old Maria Forstman wakes up in her 17-year-old body, she doesn't know how she got there, but she has to get back. She has to get back to her home, her successful career, her husband, daughters, and unborn son. But she knows that in a few weeks' time, tragedy will strike her young future husband, a devastating event that will butterfly into their eventual meeting. This story explores the responsibilities love lays on us, the complicated burdens of parenthood, and the rippling impact of her choices. She Wouldn't Change a Thing releases on August 10th. And that is a wrap for me, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this fall preview, and thank you so much for your time.
Hello, everybody. I'm Golda from Norton, and you can see all of my contact info up on the slide, so I'll just jump right in. Next slide. Hooray, a new book by Mary Roach. With her usual entertaining science writing and wonderful way of explaining things, Fuzz takes us into the world of animal and human interaction. What happens when it goes wrong? And how can humans and animals better coexist when humans keep expanding their habitat? The starred PW review says, this eminently entertaining outing is another winner from Roach. Next slide. So you remember Richard Powers from his Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, The Overstory. He's back with the new novel, Bewilderment, publishing in September. Bewilderment looks at the impact of the broken world on our children. This is a father and son story, with a father doing everything he can to help his troubled young son. And it does have many of the environmental concerns that you've seen in his other works. Next slide. Read Until You Understand is literary criticism with personal reflections woven in. Farah Jasmine Griffin is a professor at Columbia University, and she entwines memoir, history, and art while she keeps her finger on the pulse of the present, asking us to grapple with the continuing struggle for Black freedom and the ongoing project that is American democracy. Elaine Pagels called it a passionate and powerful tribute to the great gifts of Black culture. Next slide. The Family Roe by Joshua Prager is the result of years of research into the Roe versus Wade case and extensive interviews with Norma McCorvey. Prager also traces Roe's 50-year trajectory through three compelling figures, Linda Coffey, Curtis Boyd, and Mildred Jefferson. And there is some information in the book that should make the news, and this is a must-read for both sides of the debate. Next slide. What Storm, What Thunder by Miriam Chansey is the lead novel for Tin House Books this fall, and we already have a quote from Edwidge Danticat, who called it sublime. This is set in Haiti before, during, and after the Port-au-Prince earthquake of 2010. Chansey weaves together 10 different characters into a fascinating and incredibly moving novel. The book is an unforgettable testimony to the tenacity of the human spirit. Next slide. New York, My Village is a new novel by Uwem Akpan, whose previous book was an Oprah Book Club pick. The protagonist is a Nigerian editor working on a collection of stories about the Biafran War. He comes to New York for a publishing fellowship and quickly learns that even though his new colleagues and neighbors welcome him with kindness and hospitality, there is an underlying bedrock of white cultural superiority and racist assumptions about Africa, its peoples, and its food. The novel is searingly observant about the myriad ways that tribalism defines life everywhere, from the villages of Africa to the villages within New York City, but it is still full of humor and hope. Next slide. Coming from Mysterious Press in November is The Left-Handed Twin, a new book in the Jane Whitefield series by Thomas Perry. This is Thomas Perry's most popular series, and in this book, the bad guys are coming after Jane. Next slide. Breathing Lessons is an authoritative, accessible guide to how our lungs work and how to protect them. Dr. Maylon Han is a professor of medicine at the University of Michigan and a national spokesperson for the American Lung Association. Next slide. In Tastemakers, Mayuk Sen profiles 7 female chefs and food writers, all immigrants, who left an indelible mark on the way Americans eat today. Tastemakers will challenge the way readers look at what's on their plate and the women whose labor, overlooked for so long, makes those meals possible. Next slide. Patricia Highsmith's longtime editor, Anna von Planta, culled down 50 years' worth of diary entries into a revealing narrative that gives you insight into Highsmith's personality and writing and lets you see how Patricia Highsmith evolved. And next slide. This is probably our biggest book of the fall in size and page count. The Lyrics is a 2-volume boxed set of the lyrics to 154 Paul McCartney songs. It also includes tons of photographs and written reflections by Paul McCartney on the inspirations behind the songs. Spanning 64 years, The Lyrics is the definitive literary and visual record of a great songwriter. And my last slide. So, of course, please reach out if you have any questions. Watch out for my ALA at Home newsletter going out tomorrow with an ARC offer. And thank you all so much for listening.
Hello, friends. I am Talia Scherer, Senior Director of Macmillan's Adult Library Marketing Department, coming to you live from my home office. Here are all the various ways you can get in touch with us. We love hearing from you, so please reach out with any questions, concerns, virtual hugs. Next slide, please. On July 29th, we'll be hosting YA star Stephanie Garber during our highly acclaimed and totally bonkers Book Buzz Disrupt. Next slide, please. Happy Half Hour is our weekly book talking series, airing every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern, where we highlight 4 upcoming adult and YA titles. And once a month, we'll be joined by guest authors. Sarah Gailey will be joining us on September 13th. Next slide, please. Now, let's talk LGBTQIA+, so hold on to your butts because I'm going fast. Next slide, please. Tell Me How to Be by Neil Patel. In this follow-up to the NPR Best Booked, If You See Me, Don't Say Hi, LA-based songwriter Akash leaves LA and the boyfriend he keeps secret from his family and returns home to Illinois when his widowed mother sells the family home. Like the protagonist, Neil Patel is a first-generation Indian American, the son of a successful doctor, child of an arranged marriage, and a gay man, lending incredible authenticity to the story of what it means to come out as gay within the Indian American community. Next slide, please. The Days of Aphrodite by Asali Solomon. After her husband Wynn fails in his run for the state legislature, Lizelle suffers through the dinner party she's holding to St. Keith's supporters while confronting the knowledge gleaned from an FBI agent that Wynn is corrupt. She's so distant from socially engaged college friend Selena that they barely spoke when encountering each other after Barack Obama's election, but the women may come together yet. From National Book Foundation's 5 Under 35 honoree Solomon, inspired by Mrs. Dalloway and Sula, Tom Perrotta said, The Days of Aphrodite is one of the most enjoyable novels I've read in a long time. Asali Solomon is a wickedly astute observer of the human condition, alert to all of our weaknesses and absurdities, as well as our occasional moments of transcendence. Next slide, please. Oh my God, I am beyond excited for this novel, her first adult novel, Yerba Buena by Nina LaCour. This is a queer love story that follows 2 women on a star-crossed journey toward one another across the expanse of California. You may know Nina from her Prince Award-winning We Are Okay, among her many other celebrated YA novels. Yerba Buena is the Immortalists because it is centered on the choices siblings make as they decide their destinies. Yerba Buena is Call Me By Your Name because it exposes the vulnerability and aches between 2 unexpected lovers who fear they may have found the one they never would. Yerba Buena is Normal People because it is an elegant portrayal of 2 people magnetically drawn to each other amid class and power dynamics. Next slide, please. Start Without Me, I'll Be There in a Minute by Gary Janetti. From New York Times bestselling author of Do You Mind If I Cancel, Family Guy writer, and HBO star, Gary Janetti comes a collection of hilarious, laugh-out-loud, true-life stories. In the vein of David Sedaris and Jenny Lawson, the collection explores the complexities of family, frustrations of careers, and the paradox of life where sometimes everything is frustrating and also exhilarating. Next slide, please. Manywhere, stories by Morgan Thomas. The characters in Manywhere are mostly trans, non-binary, and or genderqueer, all looking for their place in the world. For fans of Laura Vandenberg, Kristen Arnett, Karen Russell, and Lauren Groff, these are stories concerned with the environment and ecology of the American South, the region's history, American identity, and the weird, surreal things that happen there. Manywhere already has a glowing blurb from Kristen Arnett. Next slide, please. Call Me Cassandra by Marcial Gala, from the author of the award-winning The Black Cathedral, Me Cassandra is a darkly magical tale of a haunted young dreamer, born in the wrong body and time, who believes himself to be a doomed prophetess from ancient Greek mythology. Me Cassandra offers a version of Cuba's participation in the Angolan Civil War through the lens of a young person, one we'd now describe as queer or possibly trans, coming of age in the repressive Cuba of the 1970s. Next slide, please. The end, thank you. Please welcome my colleague Alexa from Soho Press.
Hi, everybody. I have Talia. It is so hard to follow Talia, guys. Sorry, it's all downhill from here, but I'm going to do my best to live up to her presentation. So if you guys don't know me, I'm Alexa Waco. I'm from Soho Press. We have two imprints, Soho Crime. Well, we have three imprints, but I'm going to be talking about two, Soho Crime and Soho Press. And with that, we can move on to the first slide. House of Ashes. So I am so excited to introduce this book. Stuart Neville, for those who don't know him, is the king of Belfast noir. He's been recognized by pretty much too many accolades to name, among them the LA Times Book Prize, the Edgar, the Macavity, the Anthony Awards. But The House of Ashes is a psychological thriller perfect for fans of Gillian Flynn and Tana French, and I don't make those comps lightly, I'll have you know. It is the haunting story of a Northern Irish murder 60 years buried, and yes, there is also a ghost. So quickly, the story follows Sarah, whose husband Damien has moved them to his native Northern Ireland for what he calls a fresh start, quote unquote, in the wake of Sarah's nervous breakdown. But in Northern Ireland, Sarah is jobless, carless, friendless, and soon she realizes that she has become a prisoner in her own home. Things take a turn for the worse when one day an old woman beats on the door, insisting that the house is hers before being kind of swept back to her care facility. The interaction rattles Sarah, who also begins to experience what might be a haunting, including mysterious bloodstains that appear and disappear on the floor. So she begins to unearth this house's terrible history, and as the two women form a bond over their shared traumas, Sarah finds the strength to stand up to her abusive husband, and Mary, this old woman who has been silent for 6 decades and has this beautiful dual POV, is ready finally to tell the story of what happened to her in that house. To quote Publishers Weekly starred review, this unforgettable tale of servitude and subservience, domestic abuse, and toxic masculinity builds to a resolution offering redemption and heartfelt solace. Neville has outdone himself. So while chilling, The House of Ashes is a gorgeous portrait of violence and resilience with subtle layers of Irish history woven in. And I'm so glad to actually have books for the first time in like a year and a half or above. So this is the beautiful galley. We hope you guys check that out. So next slide. All right, we're moving on to a literary title, Blueskin Gods. Blueskin Gods is an upcoming novel from S.J. Sindhu, the author of Marriage of a Thousand Lies, which won the Publishing Triangle Debut Fiction Award, was a finalist for the Lambda Literary Award, as well as an ALA Stonewall Honor Book. This is a groundbreaking novel about faith, identity, and finding one's path, and I will say an excellent book club pick. This is the story of a boy, Kalki, born with blue skin in Tamil Nadu, India, who has been raised to believe that he is the reincarnation of the Hindu god Vishnu and he can perform miracles. This is a contemporary book, by the way. But when his aunt falls ill and leaves to seek medical treatment in the US, he believes his powers fail him no matter how much his father insists that Kalki actually saved her. The book beautifully follows Kalki's adolescence as he begins to grapple with the truth, which is that he has been brought up in a lie and his father has been swindling millions, that he's not a god, but a fraud. Eventually, he has this beautiful sequence where he travels from his ashram in India to NYC, where he discovers a band, the Blueskin Gods, and attempts to come to terms with his true identity and find his place in the world. S.J. Sindhu, for those who don't know her, is incredible at writing stories of identity and self-discovery, especially when it comes to complex questions about faith, nationality, and queerness, spaces that Kalki navigates over the course of the book. And lastly, in the words of Roxane Gay, the richness of this story will take hold of you and never let go. I'm also going to drop a link in the chat to a YouTube video where Sindhu talks about the book in her own words, much better than I do. So look out for that. Next slide and last slide is Bibliophile. I'm so excited for this book. This is Gina Apostol's Philippine National Book Award winning novel, Bibliophile. We're so proud to be bringing it into print for the first time in the US. This is the story of a young woman caught between a lifelong desire to escape into books, something that I feel like we can all relate to, and a real world revolution. It's set 2 decades into the brutal rule of Ferdinand Marcos in the Philippines. The economy is in deep recession and civil unrest is growing by the day. But amidst all of this, Primi Peregrino, our main character, has her own priorities, which is tracking down books and pursuing romantic connections with their authors. For Primi, the burgeoning revolution means that writers are gathering more often and with greater urgency, so that every poetry reading she attends is like, quote, a justice league of authors for her to choose among. So as the Marcos dictatorship stands poised to topple, Primi remains true to her fantasy that she, a vagabond quote, a vagabond from history, a runaway from time, can be saved by sex, love, and books. And I guess who doesn't love that combination? I don't have time to say everything I want to about Gina. I will flash this PW cover that came out last time she released a novel. Her work is often compared to Nabokov and Borges, but she's completely original in her own category, absolutely, not to mention award-winning several times over. We've published several of her books to wide acclaim, including The Revolution According to Raimundo Mata. They're playful, hilarious, at the same time, they're an incredibly moving and personal look at the history of the Philippines. And you wonder how someone pulls that off. Gina pulls it off brilliantly. She's one of the best writers writing about really politics today, I would say. And so I know all of you will love this book because it is a love letter to the written word and a brilliantly unorthodox look at the rebellion that brought down a dictatorship. So that is Bibliophile. And next, I just want to say thank you for joining us. We do have a booth. Please visit us and enter our Swagapalooza giveaway. So hope to see you there.
Thanks, Alexa. My friends, I am happy to be here with you today. My name is Chris Vicari. I am the Director of Library Marketing for Sterling. I'm going to talk to you about our Fall 2021 titles. I begin with the next slide, please. Career Remix. When it comes to your full-time job or your side hustle, you're never too old or young to reinvent yourselves. And these days, folks, let's face it, every few years, you have to. Things change fast and you got to be ready for those changes when they hit you. And while you probably know more than you think, this book will definitely reinvigorate you and your confidence. Startup founder, entrepreneur Damon Brown offers real-world solutions and methods for your existing skills to change careers and thrive in the current job market and gig economy. I'm told that Damon was the first entrepreneur in residence at the Toledo Library, so go Mud Hens. Next slide is Vice President Kamala Harris. As the 49th Vice President, she made history as the first woman, first African-American person, first South Asian American, and first Caribbean American to hold the office. Next slide, please. This book covers her life from her childhood in Berkeley to her Howard College years, her senatorial career. Next slide, please. And also this past year's most unique campaign, plus the inauguration and her first months in the White House with sidebars giving context to female representation in government and her key speeches throughout. Next slide, please. And the next slide, please. September 11th, a commemoration of the 20th anniversary of 9/11 from Associated Press, beginning with a detailed timeline. This history follows their coverage of the events of 9/11 in New York City, Washington, D.C., and Shanksville, Pennsylvania, to the rescue efforts and aftermath, the country's response, the continuing legal proceedings, the building of the National September 11 Memorial and Museum, and the continuing rebuilding of downtown New York City. Next slide, please. It will feature 75 articles from Associated Press correspondents, both archival and new contextual accounts that cover the major events. Also included is a foreword by Robert De Niro, whose Tribeca Film Festival helped revitalize New York City after the attacks. Next slide, please. Approximately 175 images visually tell the stories of 9/11, both its horror and the inspiring resilience that lives long after the anniversary date. Next slide, please. Jimi Hendrix, Voodoo Child. Even to this day, Jimi Hendrix is still thought to be the greatest guitar player to ever pick up a pick. This book by journalist Harvey Kubernick celebrates Hendrix, whose tragic death in 1970 at the age of 27 cut his ride short. Next slide, please. We have stunning artwork, psychedelic design, and fascinating behind-the-scenes contributions from the musicians and photographers of the time, and also Janie Hendrix, Jimmy's sister. Next slide, please. Contributors range from Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey to Carlos Santana, Clive Davis, Stephen Stills, and many more. Next slide. We hope you enjoy Jimi Hendrix, Voodoo Child. Next is Monster, the real story of the shocking Jeffrey Dahmer murders as told by the Milwaukee Journal reporter who broke the story and had exclusive access to the detectives, psychiatrists, lawyers, prosecutors, and judges involved. You'll read about forensics and old-fashioned police work that identified the victims, the personal stories of the victims' families, the riveting trial, his life sentence, and later murder in prison. There is both a Netflix scripted series on Dahmer by acclaimed producer-director Ryan Murphy, predicted to air in fall 2021, as well as a documentary. Ann Schwartz, our author, in 1991, as a reporter for the Milwaukee Journal, she broke the story of serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer. Next slide will show you some other titles in our true crime library at Sterling. Next slide, Vogue Knitting Lace. Originally founded in 1932, Vogue Knitting Magazine is the most respected and recognizable fashion knitting magazine in the world. This new book will give you 40 lace accessories, shawls, sweaters, and dresses to leave you breathless. Next slide, of course, working with lace is delicate, bold, and diverse in every possible way, as this collection includes many different types of projects over a range of skill levels. You have fingerless gloves, hats, shawls, cardigans, and dresses, all included from the easy to the challenging. It's beauty and value in a stunning package. And lastly, it's partridge in a pear tree. Celebrate the season with 12 Carol-inspired crochet patterns. And if you don't believe me, the next slide of Peter the Blackbird can tell you, or maybe the next slide of Margot the Swan, about how this cheerful collection of projects with inspiration from the 12 days of Christmas will have you hopelessly devoted to crocheting your way to create a flock of feathered friends, hens, geese, and of course, a partridge in a pear tree. These finished creations make wonderful stocking stuffers. My friends, those are the books on my next slide, and that's the way it is Tuesday, June 22. My next slide will feature my details and those of my nice colleague, Andrea, both of us here for your sterling needs. Thank you for being here today, and thanks to Annie and the ALMA committee for getting our show together today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Chris. I just have the perfect title to go with your Christmas-themed title. This is Annalisa Sandstrom from Chronicle Books, and I'm reporting here from the West Coast. I have 4 titles for you, and e-galleys of all of these titles are available in NetGalley and Edelweiss. Next slide, please. We have baking for the holidays. Chris, doesn't this go perfectly with your Partridge in a Pear Tree title? So you may remember Sarah Kiefer's previous book, 100 Cookies, which has sold 80,000 copies now. I was saying 70,000 up until a week ago. Hi, Chris. Yes, thank you. This published last August, and Sarah is now following up with baking for the holidays. She is the beloved baker behind the Vanilla Bean blog and is now turning her talents, thankfully for us, to holiday baking with 100 recipes that include Nutella star bread, peanut butter cups, red velvet crinkle cookies, frozen bonbons, croissants, everything. This is coming September 7th, and I really highly recommend that you get your orders in early and often. We are seeing pre-orders build very quickly at the library wholesalers, and we had some stock issues with the last one, so I want everyone to be able to get their copies. Next slide, please. You can see the delicious Nutella star bread. Next slide, please. White cake with cranberries and white chocolate buttercream. Next slide, please. Frozen bonbons. I hope everyone's hungry. Next slide, please. We have Flavors of the Sun by Christine Zahadi Nelson, who's the culinary director and 4th generation co-owner of the iconic James Beard award-winning Brooklyn Market Zahadi's. Here are 120 simple dishes that showcase the versatility of ingredients like sumac, preserved lemon, halva, pomegranate molasses, tahini, Aleppo pepper, za'atar, and more. And she has an updated take on nachos, yum, and harissa mac and cheese. And there's a spectacular pistachio cheesecake, and there are tahini enriched brownies. The Flavors of the Sun will inspire home cooks to seek out distinctive Middle Eastern ingredients and make them essential components of their everyday pantry. This is coming September 7th. Next slide, please. If you're interested in pomegranate roasted beets with goat cheese, this is the slide for you. Next slide, please. And here's the kibba pan pie. And again, Flavors of the Sun is coming September 7th. And here we go. No, you're great. We're on to Grist. Moving on. In Grist, author Abra Behrens, who has been named James Beard semifinalist for Outstanding Chef, Great Lakes region, is the author of Roughage. And here in Grist, she shares more than 125 recipes for 29 different types of grains, legumes, and seeds that in combination with vegetables and lean proteins are really the stars of the healthiest, most variable, and most satisfying meals, many of which are gluten-free. This is the A to Z of grains, beans, and legumes. The content is wide-ranging. There's information for 29 different grains, legumes, and seeds. How many times can I say that? Including amaranth, barley, black-eyed peas, buckwheat, bulgur, chickpeas, common peas, that's a bit rude, corn, cowpeas, crowder beans, farro, fava, field, on and on, quinoa, etc. Home cooks will be attracted to the reference quality of the book, its heft. It's 125 recipes with 300 variations and 448 pages. There's a unique recipe style, and there's so many variations included. It's coming October 5th to an autumnal themed library display near you. Next slide, please. You can see some of the table of contents here, and then next slide. Oh, look at those beans. Anyway, next slide. And on to the next slide, which is my last title. I have a Bibliophile, Diverse Spines. This is Jamise Harper, who is the founder of Diverse Spines book community, and she has collaborated with beloved author and illustrator Jane Mount to create a unique volume filled with treasures. There are dozens of themed illustrated book stacks, like classics, speculative fiction, kids' picture books, author recommendations, and more, all with an emphasis on authors of color. There are reading recommendations from leading BIPOC literary influencers. Next slide, please. There's a list of book club darlings, tours of treasured Black-owned bookstores. Next slide, please. Books with beautiful covers. Hello, publishers on the call. Each page is brimming with inspiration to kickstart your patrons' next literary adventures. Next slide, please. It's the perfect book to build themed displays around, and hopefully will lead readers to some new discoveries. Next slide, please. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. Come find Chronicle Books on Edelweiss and NetGalley and wherever online friends are found. And thank you for your service. Over to you, Anne.
Thank you, Annalisa. Well, no, I cannot stop thinking of all those sweets. I'm ready for a nice break. Well, hello, everyone. I'm also reporting from the West Coast. I'm Anne Fontenot from Blackstone Publishing, and I'm excited to be highlighting some of our upcoming titles for the season. So let's jump right in. Next, please. USA Today and international bestselling author Catherine Ryan Howard is back with 56 Days. It's a psychological suspense set against the backdrop of COVID and lockdowns. It's one of the most anticipated spring and summer 2021 crime books. You can see Karen Slaughter gave it a great review. She said that 56 Days is a terrific novel written by an author who is certain to become a distinguished voice in crime fiction. You won't want to stop reading until the very end. So at the center, no one even knew they were together. Now one of them is dead. When lockdown threatens to keep Oliver and Kira apart, Oliver suggested they move in together. And a month later, detective discovers a body in Oliver's apartment. Has lockdown created an opportunity for the perfect murder? That is the question. You will have to read to find out. So Catherine Ryan Howard, debut thriller Distress Signals was an Irish Times and USA Today bestseller. It was also shortlisted for the Crimes Writers Association, John Creasy New Blood Dagger, and the Irish Crime Novel of the Year. Her second novel, The Liar's Girl, was a finalist for the Edgar Award for Best Novel, and her most recent novel, The Nothing Man, was also a #1 bestseller in her native Ireland. So that is releasing August 17th. Next, please. Then we have #1 internationally best-selling author Dervla McTurnan's new mystery, The Good Turn. The Good Turn is the highly anticipated third book in the Cormac Riley series, which began with the acclaimed The Ruin and the Scholar. So we return to McTurnan wonderfully atmospheric islands to find Detective Cormac Riley dealing with complication in both his personal and his professional life. An investigation into the abduction of a young woman goes horribly awry, a disastrous mistake that sees Riley suspended from duty and Garda Peter Fisher exiled from Galway. What follows is an incredibly gripping and nerve-wracking police procedural that is just begging to be adapted for TV, really, between you and I. So tightly written and expertly crafted, The Good Turn lays out several seemingly separate strands of stories and then proceeds to tangle them up into the most intriguing ways. So the genius behind Dervla McTurnan's writing is that even if you think you've guessed the truth, you can be sure it's probably not the whole truth. So she's always kept a few plot twists up in her sleeve. She's also a master at creating complex and captivating characters. So Publishers Weekly said she was a writer to watch. Candice Fox, said she was taut, dense, and darkly addictive. And that will be coming out August 31st. Next. Then we have a little darling book. I know I've been presenting it a few times. It's coming out September 7th, No Gods, No Monster by Cadwell Turnbull. So No Gods, No Monsters is a modern retelling of the civil rights movement of the 60s and 70s, but with an emphasis of preternatural beings combining elements of The Wire and Buffy the Vampire Slayer with American gods. So it's one of the much anticipating new work that launches the Convergence saga. Publishers Weekly gave it a star review. It's one of the Forbes magazine 10 most anticipated books of 2021, according to the independent booksellers. One of the Mary Claire's must-read 2021 book criticisms of Black authors, a Goodreads 2021 most anticipated sci-fi novel and most anticipated fiction by Black authors, a Tor.com pick of the most anticipated sci-fi books of the rest of 2021, a Book Riot a pick of 2021 Black LGBTQ books to pre-order. And so we have a lot going on for this book. It's also for your consideration for library reads. The deadline for voting, it's August 1st. Cadwell Turnbull's first novel has also a lot going on. It's being optioned by AMC for development for a series. So we're very excited about this little upcoming book, September 7th. Just mark your calendars.
And that's actually your time.
All right, well then we have this book. If you look for NetGalley and Edelweiss, you can find all the arcs, and you have all of our contact information right here. And then next is Lainey from Harper.
Hi guys, good to see everybody's name popping up in the chat. We're gonna go quickly through some intro slides next. So social, anything you want to find out about what I say, librarylovefest.com, and those are our social handles. Next. Hope you can join us for Door to Door, which is our Facebook Live that happens every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Next. And we have a podcast, which is great information to really dive into for each book. We did something for National Library Week, which is highlighted here. We have audiobook discussions. Go check that out anywhere you get podcasts. Next. Let's get into some books. So this is The Cat Who Saved Books by Sosuke Natsukawa. So this is the perfect, book for book lovers from our Harper Via imprint, which is an imprint that tells stories from all over the world. And there's a lot of translated works here too. So in this book, it's the number one bestseller in Japan, and it won second place at the Japanese Bookseller Awards. Japanese readers really responded to the appealing mix of contemporary fantasy with bibliophilic fiction. And in this book, we have bookish high school student Rintaro is about to close his secondhand bookstore he inherited from his beloved grandfather. But then a talking cat, yes, a talking cat named Tiger appears and asks for, rather demands that the teenager help him save books with him. And so they're going to go liberate books from neglectful owners who maybe leave their books to perish, or maybe they meet a publishing drone who only wants to create bestsellers. It's a really unusual friendship, but it's a really fun story and great for those who believe books are so much more than words on paper. So that is that book. And next I'm going to talk about The French Gift by Kirsty Manning. So this is the author of The Song of the Jade Lily. It's set in 2 time periods, one in a French prison in 1940, where a former maid at a luxury villa on the Riviera, Margot, she finds herself in a prison cell with writer and French resistance fighter Josephine Morant. Together, they are transferred to a work camp in Germany for 4 years. A lot of secrets are there. And then it goes to Paris, present day, with Evie Black, who lives in Paris with her son, Hugo. They are mourning the great love of her life. Her husband died. And a letter arrives regarding the legacy of her husband's great aunt, Josephine Morant, wanting to spend a last summer with her son. She goes to her house, now theirs, and unravels an official story of the famous novelist and a truth of a murder. But along the way, she discovers this little known true story of women who were enslaved by German forces in World War II. And it has a really cool search for an old manuscript in the house as a subplot. Next, we have Sex Cult Nun by Faith Jones. So this is Educated Meets the Vow. It is fascinating. It's an inspiring and crazier than fiction memoir of growing up and breaking free from the Children of God, which is an oppressive extremist religious cult. Faith Jones was raised to be a part of this army, and actually her grandfather founded it, the Children of God, and over decades it grew to be this international organization, became notorious for alarming sex practices and allegations of abuse. She survived, kind of pulled through it, educated herself, and at the age of 23 she broke away. So this is the origins of that cult itself, that organization, but also her coming of age story and just great women's empowerment. Next, I want to tell you about The Sentence by Louise Ferdrick. This is a new novel from the National Book Award winning and now Pulitzer Prize winning, very exciting, author Louise Erdrich. It takes place around a small independent bookstore in contemporary Minneapolis, follows a turbulent year in the life of a strong, though vulnerable Ojibwe woman named Tuki. She was in prison, she learned to read there, and so she's kind of naturally goes to this bookstore after to recreate her life. And when she's there, one of their most persistent customers, Flora, dies suddenly, and her ghost refuses to leave. So Flora starts to return on All Souls Day to haunt the bookstore, and in particular Tuki. And as she sees this year of disease and violence and political upheaval, because she comes on All Souls Day 2019, and it ends on All Souls Day 2020. So we all know what happened during that year. So it's very timely, and it really shows us the story of how history and identity has really come to affect the present. And, you know, Louise has a place in her heart for bookstores because she owns one. Next is The Teller of Secrets by Basi Ajapon. So this is another Harper Via book, very excited. This is an emerging writer from West Africa whose work has just been more celebrated and recognized. She's gonna be fresh. We're really gonna work to push her out and be a great house author for us. It's about a feisty Nigerian Ghanaian girl growing up in the political upheaval of the 60s post-colonial Ghana. So Isi is the unofficial secret keeper of the family, and she's kind of humiliated and punished for her own sexual exploration. And she begins to question why the secrets of men and women are so different and have different consequences. And that's all against her coming of age, but also this fraught political climate. It's a self-discovery tale and feminist awakening. So I think that's my time, but thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Margaret Coffey from Sourcebooks, and I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to tell you about some of my favorite upcoming Sourcebooks titles. Thank you for your support. Please remember to vote for Library Reads. Our galleys are available as downloads on NetGalley and Edelweiss. Feel free to reach out with any questions about new titles, virtual author appearances, book club guides, or newsletters. We always love to hear from you. I just dropped an Edelweiss collection in the chat, so you can follow along. And next, just a couple of recent favorites of mine, and next. And now we are on to new titles. The Auschwitz Photographer is the true story of Wilhelm Brasi. Brasi's tale is a stark black and white reminder of the horrors of the Holocaust. This gripping work of World War II narrative nonfiction takes readers behind the barbed wire fences of the world's most feared concentration camp, bringing his story to life as he clicks the shutter button thousands of times before ultimately joining the resistance, defying the Nazis, and defiantly setting down his camera for good. Next slide. Secrets of the Spraker. Iceland is the best place on earth to be a woman, but why? For the past 12 years, the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report has ranked Iceland #1 on its list of countries closing the gap in equality between men and women. Eliza Reid, the First Lady of Iceland, examines her adopted homeland's attitude towards women, the deep-seated cultural sense of fairness, the influence of current and historical role models, and crucially, the areas where Iceland still has room for improvement. Reid's own experience as an immigrant from small-town Canada who never expected to become a First Lady is expertly interwoven with interviews with dozens of Spraker, the extraordinary women, to form the backbone of an illuminating discussion of what it means to move through the world as a woman. And next, moving on to fiction. Next. The Last Mona Lisa is a gripping novel exploring the Mona Lisa's very real theft in 1911 and the present underbelly of the art world. More than one art historian has wondered if the painting now in the Louvre is a fake. This suspenseful tale taps into our universal fascination with Da Vinci's Enigma, why people are driven to possess certain works of art, and our fascination with the authentic and the fake. And fun fact, Jonathan Settlofer is an internationally best-selling author, but he's also an artist who has been making replications of famous paintings for wealthy clients for more than 20 years. Next slide. 3 Black women are linked in unexpected ways to the same influential white man in Stockholm as they build their new lives in the most open society run by the most private people. Told through the perspectives of each of the 3 women, one a PR executive, another model turned flight attendant, and the last a Nigerian refugee working as a cleaning woman. In every mirror, she's Black is a fast-paced, richly nuanced, yes, accessible contemporary novel that touches on important social issues of racism and classism and what it means to be a Black woman navigating a white-dominated society. Next slide. Sonali Dev meets friends in Love, Chai, and other 4-letter words about a group of friends of Indian heritage finding love in New York City. Kiran Mathur knows firsthand just how dangerous love can be. After all, her sister's marriage in India nearly destroyed her family. So she's decided not to fall for anyone who might disappoint her parents. That is, until she meets her new neighbor, Nash Hawthorne. Nash is a dedicated psychologist and determined to live a solitary life and avoid attachment of any kind. Author Annika Sharman is the founding co-host of the podcast The Woke Desi, which aims to discuss issues surrounding South Asian multicultural experiences. Next, and finally, I don't know about you, but I adore Susanna Kearsley. She's one of my favorite authors on our list. If you read Diana Gabaldon and Deborah Harkness, you should be reading Susanna Kearsley. Her new book, The Vanish Days, is a historical tale of intrigue and revolution in Scotland and a prequel to her popular The Winter Sea. In the autumn of 1707, old enemies from the Highlands are finding common ground as they join to protest the new union with England. Young widow Lily comes forward to claim her benefits for the loss of her husband 8 years before, but her claim is challenged, setting into motion a story of adventure and romance. Next slide. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great afternoon. Feel free to email with any further questions, and over to Terry.
Hello, everyone. I'm Terry Akers. I'm the marketing director at Other Press. I've got 4 books to tell you about, so we'll go ahead and get started. The first is The Anomaly. This is our lead fiction for the fall. Some of you may remember Hervé Letellier's All About Love, which we published about 10 years ago. He's been famous in France forever, not so much here in the US, but this book won the Prix Goncourt last fall, and I guarantee this is going to be his breakout book here. So Hervé is a member of Oulipo, which is kind of formally, structurally experimental group of writers out of France. If you've read Oulipo before, I'm sure your ears are already perking up, but you don't need need to know anything about that to love and appreciate this book. It's really just a fantastic read. I think it's his most ambitious work yet, but also totally accessible and gripping. So a quick gist of the plot. We get backstories of several different characters: a hitman, a Nigerian pop star, a Black woman American lawyer, an obscure novelist, and woven into their individual stories is the one that ties them together. On a flight into JFK Airport in New York, they hit a violent patch of turbulence and emerge on the other side to a reality that is both perfectly familiar and utterly strange. As it charts the fallout, the anomaly takes us on a journey from Lagos and Mumbai to the White House, a top secret hangar, and beyond. Cloud Atlas is in my top 10 favorite books of all time, so I don't say this lightly. I haven't read anything like this since Cloud Atlas. It's like high literature following the lead of a bingeable Netflix series and drawing on the best of genre fiction, from chick lit to mystery, while also playfully critiquing their hallmarks. So this and all of the books that I'm going to quickly tell you about next are available as DRCs in Edelweiss, and once I am done talking at you, I will drop a link to our fall catalog in the chat. Next is Home Reading Service by Fabio Morabito. This is coming out in November. This is Fabio's English debut. It won Mexico's highest literary prize, and we're really excited to bring his work to an English audience. He's a renowned short story writer and will also be bringing out his collection in 2022. So about the book. After the misfortune, our protagonist, Eduardo, is sentenced to a year of community service reading to the elderly and disabled. He's lost his driver's license and leads a dull, lonely life. And at first, he seems unable to connect. He reads the words of Dostoevsky and Henry James, but doesn't truly understand them. Then he comes across a poem his father had copied by the Mexican poet Isabel Freire, and it affects him as no literature has before. We've all had that experience, right? So this book is funny and dark and charming. It's for readers of Yuri Herrera and Valeria Luiselli. Next is In the Shadow of the Yali by Suad Dervis. This is another English debut, a rediscovered classic from the 40s, from the feminist writer and activist Suad Dervis. Like so many female writers of the first half of the 20th century, her work was never brought to the English-speaking world, but this book offers a chance for readers to right that wrong and discover what Turkish readers have known for decades. Set in a changing Istanbul, In the Shadow of the Yali tells the story of forbidden love and its consequences. Dervis gives us a strikingly modern portrayal of a love affair with its frank emphasis on the influence of money, and it really gives us a fascinating contrast to classic tales of infidelity like Anna Karenina and Madame Bovary. Last is Lemon. This is the debut novel from South Korean writer Yoo Sun-kwon. If you loved Bong Joon-ho's Parasite and Memories of Murder, you are going to love this book. In the summer of 2002, 19-year-old Kim Hae-on is killed in what becomes known as the high school beauty murder. 17 years pass without any resolution for the people who knew and loved her, and the grief and uncertainty take a cruel toll on her younger sister, Daeon, in particular. Unable to move on with her life, Daeon tries in her own twisted way to recover some of what she's lost, ultimately setting out to find the truth of what happened. It's told at different points in time from the perspectives of Daeon and two of her sister's classmates, and loosely follows the structure of a detective novel, but finding the perpetrator is kind of beside the point. Instead, this story explores grief and trauma, raising important questions about guilt, retribution, and the meaning of death and life. It's a short little thing. It's under 200 pages. You will read it in one sitting. This one's coming out on October 12th. And those are the 4 from me. I will drop my Edelweiss link in the chat and pass it on to the next. Thank you all so much.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rachel Mann with Penguin Random House Library Marketing, and I'm actually joining you today from my local library. So I'm very excited to tell you about these fall books I think your patrons are going to love. Next slide. First up, we have Beautiful Country, a memoir from Qian Julie Wang, perfect for readers of Educated and Angela's Ashes. In Chinese, the word for America, Meiguo, translates directly to beautiful country. Yet when 7-year-old Qian arrives in New York City in 1994, she's overwhelmed by crushing fear and scarcity. Qian goes to school hungry, where she teaches herself English through library books, her only source of comfort. At home, young Qian, now acting as her family's translator, a student, and a worker, cannot ask for help. The #1 rule in America still stands. To be noticed is to risk losing everything. Searing an Unforgettable, Beautiful Country is an essential American story about a girl coming of age in the shadows who never stops seeking the light. Qian is also a panelist at our Book Club Strengthen Community and Celebrate Diversity panel at the upcoming ALA Annual Conference, so we're very excited to have her with us there as well. Next slide. Next up, we have Dare to Know by James Kennedy. Dark matter meets annihilation in this mind-bending and emotional speculative thriller set in a world where the exact moment of your death can be predicted for a price. Our narrator is the most talented salesperson at Dare to Know, an enigmatic company that has developed the technology to predict anyone's death down to the second. Divorced, estranged from his sons, and broke, he's driven to violate the cardinal rule of the business by forecasting his own death day. The problem? His prediction says he died 23 minutes ago. The only person who can confirm its accuracy is Julia, the woman he loved and lost during his rise up the ranks of Dare to Know. As he travels across the country to see her, he's forced to confront his past, the choices he's made, and the terrifying truth about the company he works for. Wildly ambitious and highly immersive, this mind-bending thriller explores the collapsing boundaries between reality, myth, and conspiracy as it races toward its shocking conclusion. Great for fans of Blake Crouch and the Last Policeman series. Next slide. Next, we have a new novel from the author of A Gentleman in Moscow, The Lincoln Highway. Here, Amor Towles returns with a stylish and propulsive novel set in 1950s America. In June 1954, 18-year-old Emmett Watson is driven home to Nebraska by the warden of the juvenile work farm where he has just served 15 months for involuntary manslaughter. His mother, long gone, his father, recently deceased, and the family farm foreclosed upon by the bank. Emmett's intention is to pick up his 8-year-old brother, Billy, and head to California where they can start their lives anew. But when the warden drives away, Emmett discovers that 2 friends from the work farm have hidden themselves in the trunk of the warden's car. Spanning just 10 days and told from multiple points of view, Towles' third novel is filled with all of the elements Towles readers have come to love. Wit, humor, intrigue, sophisticated storytelling, fascinating and compelling characters, and atmosphere. Towles fans and book clubs will be thrilled with this latest edition. Next slide. And last but certainly not least is Jodi Picoult's newest novel, Wish You Were Here. Diana O'Toole is perfectly on track. She'll be married by 30, done having kids by 35, and move out to New York City suburbs, all while climbing the professional ladder in the cutthroat art auction world. She's not engaged just yet, but she knows her boyfriend, Finn, a surgical resident, is about to propose on their romantic getaway to the Galapagos, days before her 30th birthday, right on time. But then a virus that felt worlds away has appeared in the city, and on the eve of their departure, Finn breaks the news. It's all hands on deck at the hospital, and he has to stay behind. You should still go, he assures her, since it would be a shame for all of their non-refundable trip to go to waste. And so, reluctantly, she goes. But soon the whole island goes under quarantine, and she's stranded until the borders reopen. In the Galapagos Islands, where Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection was formed, Diana finds herself examining her relationships, her choices, and herself, and wondering if when she goes home, she too will have evolved into someone completely different. And that's it for me today. Thank you so much, everyone.
Hi guys, this is Lynette. I am the library marketer for Harlequin Trade Publishing. It is hard to narrow down my 5 favorite book children down to 5 minutes, but I will try with a mix of fiction and nonfiction that I personally love, starting with The Great Glorious. So yes, this is Josh Ritter, the singer-songwriter. He will be speaking on Thursday at ALA's United for Libraries Gala Tea. He obviously does a better job talking about his book than I do, but I will give you a little intro here. This is a whopper of a tale, and I'm so excited to have this on the list. The Great Glorious is set in the mountains in the era of moonshine and the last days of lumberjacking. It is narrated by a foul-mouthed 99-year-old who would love to regale you from his deathbed with hilarious tall tales about his coming of age. There is murder, there is mayhem, there is a larger-than-life cast of characters, there's even a little bit of witchcraft. You'll love it all the way through to its awesome ending. Next slide, please. Last girl ghosted. So Ren is just looking for a hookup when she meets Adam, but to her surprise, she ends up falling for him hard. They begin a whirlwind romance, and then with one mysterious message, he just disappears. His profile's deleted, his phone disconnected. In other words, she's just been ghosted. So while she's dealing with the horrible emotional fallout, a detective shows up on her doorstep. Apparently there are other girls who thought they were in love with him, and then they disappeared. So Ren now needs to know who this guy is, and she's on a hunt that leads her deeper into his dark past. But because this is Lisa Unger, our heroine has a past too. And now the hunt is a game of cat and mouse, and we don't know who the predator is and who is the prey. Next slide. Girly drinks. So this is the ultimate historical drinking tour around the world. And spoiler alert, your travel guides are all women. So I'm not talking just about the innovative woman since ancient times or cocktail recipes invented by women, which are all in the book. But for instance, this is the fact that I love to share. You might have heard me say it already. Did you know that we can thank women for the literal bar? Okay, so as in during the rise of industrialization in England, the place for women to go for a drink was gin shops, because those establishments catered specifically to women drinkers. And surprise, surprise, those working women did not have time to be sitting at tables socializing. So these long bars were created where they could order a drink, slam it down, and go. So, I mean, it makes sense, right? Leave it to women to not only want their alcohol, but to get it efficiently. So the book is rife with details like that. Find out how the history of women and alcohol led to things like the Halloween witch costume, the term bridal shower, why we associate champagne with celebrations. Come for the facts, stay for the funny footnotes. Book's hilarious, it's biting, it's just a lot of fun. As I was reading it, I kept thinking of more and more people I want to send the book to as gifts. So there's something in it for everybody. Next slide. Never Saw Me Coming. I've been talking about this one for a while now. If you haven't checked it out yet, please do. Vera Kurian is a social psychologist in DC, and in her debut thriller, she pits a group of college students who are diagnosed psychopaths against a campus killer who's targeting them. So there's dark humor to it because she really captures that college voice, but there's also serving of social commentary. The author will also be speaking at ALA's United for Libraries on Saturday. She'll be on the mystery panel, so please check her out there. And last title for me, Boss Up. So I love ending on this book. The subtitle for Rick Ross's book is A Hustler's Guide to Building Your Empire. If that alone doesn't want to make you read the book, I don't know what to say. We published his New York Times bestselling memoir, Hurricanes, a few years ago, where we all got a close look at the adversities he overcame to become the hip hop icon he is today. He's also an entrepreneur with his own record label, restaurants, grooming products, and more. So it made sense to us that his follow-up book would be a guide sharing the secrets of his success. This is a book I didn't know I needed right now. First of all, I found myself laughing out loud at his anecdotes. This is a much more lighthearted book than his memoir, obviously. But also he's just really, really smart, and it makes sense. As he was building his own career, imagine he's surrounded by all these celebrities he admires, from hip hop icons to athletes, as they make their fortunes and then completely crash and burn. So those were all lessons he took to heart, and they became practical applications that he calls the Boss Commandments. The title of the book is directly lifted from the mantra that he repeats a lot on social media, which is every day is a perfect day to boss up. And on that positive note, that is it for me. Check out all these books on NetGalley and Edelweiss. Reach out if you have any questions. Have a great conference. And next up is Disney with my friend Latoya.
Hi, I'm Latoya Maitland, School and Library Marketing Manager at Disney Publishing, and I'll take you through a few of our upcoming adult titles from our new adult imprint, Hyperion Avenue. So we'll start with fiction. Next slide. So first up, we have Meant to Be, a new series of modern-day rom-coms inspired by classic fairy tales we all know and love. The first title coming out is If the Shoe Fits by best-selling author of Dumpling, Julie Murphy. Cindy loves shoes. As a fashion-obsessed plus-size woman, she can never find designer clothes that work for her body, but a special pair of shoes always fits just right. With a shiny new design degree, but no job in sight, Cindy moves back in with her stepmother, Erica Tremaine, the executive producer of the world's biggest dating reality show. When a contestant on Before Midnight bows out at the last minute, Cindy is thrust into the spotlight. But being the first and only fat contestant on Before Midnight turns her into a viral sensation and a body positive icon overnight. Even harder to believe, she can actually see herself falling for this Prince Charming. To make it to the end, despite the fans, the haters, and a house full of fellow contestants she's not sure she can trust, Cindy will have to take a leap of faith and hope her heels and her heart don't break in the process. Next slide, please. Next, we have the Throwback List by Lily Anderson, which is the story of 3 women in their 20s who find themselves reunited in their sleepy beach town. Joe, Autumn, and Bianca thought they had left Sandy Point, Oregon far behind when they graduated high school, but life seldom goes according to plan. Bianca Bori Birdie, former prom queen and valedictorian, juggles managing the family tattoo parlor, caring for her grandmother, and adjusting to a new marriage. Autumn Kelly used to be an actress, but now she teaches drama at Sandy Point High. And Joe Freeman has it all together with a cool job in Silicon Valley. She's well on her way to reaching every one of her goals before 30, or she was before she got fired and landed right back home with her parents and teenage sister. When Jo finds an old bucket list in her childhood bedroom, it sets the 3 women on a path that brings them closer together with each task. And it just might lead to a life none of them could have planned. Next slide. So we're moving on to nonfiction. Next slide. First up, we have Once Upon a Time in Queens, which is a celebration of the New York Mets' iconic World Series championship with a lengthy foreword by Jimmy Kimmel discussing what the Mets and their triumph meant to him. October 2021 will mark the 35th anniversary of the '86 Mets World Series win, and this book will tie into ESPN's upcoming 30 for 30 docuseries on the same subject. This tie-in book will be filled with unique photographs of the team and the era, as well as an oral history with new contributions from Keith Hernandez, Daryl Strawberry, Dwight Gooden, Ron Darling, and many others. Next. We have A Little Closer to Home by Ginger Z, chief meteorologist for ABC News. Her first autobiography, Natural Disaster, was a huge success, putting a very relatable face on depression and helping lessen the stigma around mental health issues. After hearing from her readers, Ginger decided to go deeper, and in this moving follow-up, she shares her truest self, including her stormy childhood, her ongoing struggles with crippling depression, her suicide attempts, and more. In spite of its serious subject matter, Ginger's positive, life-affirming outlook comes through loud and clear. Written with great heart and quite a bit of humor, Ginger normalizes issues and challenges millions of people face every day. Next slide. And last, we have Be Our Guest from the Disney Institute. This is a completely updated and revised edition of our best-selling Be Our Guest, which was last published 10 years ago. The Disney Institute shares the operational practices used to serve guests of the park and resorts for over 60 years. The book will detail how and why excellent service does not simply come from a friendly smile or a easy transaction. It's a result from truly understanding customers' needs and putting the right guidelines and customer service standards in place in order to exceed their expectations. And no one understands this better than the Walt Disney Parks and Resorts. Last slide. And this is how you can find us online and on social media. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Berquist. I'm a marketing coordinator at Simon & Schuster, and I'm so excited to talk to you today about a few of my favorite books for fall. Next slide. So first, I just wanted to touch upon our recent favorites. If you haven't had a chance to check out these books, please make sure you do so. Next slide. So first up, we have 3 Girls from Bronzeville by Dawn Turner. There were 3 Black girls, Dawn, her younger sister, and her best friend. These girls come of age in the 1970s in Bronzeville on Chicago's South Side. Growing up in the glow of the recent civil rights movement, these girls are offered a promise. They will have more rights, freedoms, and opportunities than any generation of Black Americans in history. But then fate intervenes and it sends them off in wildly different directions. There's heartbreak, loss, displacement, and even murder, and Dawn struggles to make sense of the shocking turns that consume her sister and her best friend. I finished this book over the weekend. I absolutely loved it. It's fantastic. This book really is a testament to the unique struggles of Black women, but it's also a celebration of Black women and also sisterhood and friendship. It is a memoir, but it reads like a novel. You will become so invested in these women and you will just race through these pages because you will just be so curious to see how their lives turned out. It goes on sale September 7th and the Library Reads voting deadline is August 1st. Next slide. The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina by Zoraida Cordova. So when the Montoya family's beloved matriarch, Orchidea Divina, invites them to her funeral to collect their inheritance, they hope to uncover her closely guarded secrets. Instead, they are left with more questions, not answers. Years later, the family is haunted by a hidden figure that begins to pick them off one by one, and the remaining descendants must unite together to protect their family and reclaim their power. This novel is absolutely gorgeous. The prose will instantly transport you to this mysterious and magical world. I flew through these pages because I was as desperate as Orchidea's grandchildren to discover the truth behind her secrets and her magic. And this book is ultimately about what we knowingly and unknowingly inherit from our ancestors, the ties that bind us, and taking control of your power. Zoraida Cordova is actually going to be the preview speaker for our fall 2021 Adult Librarian Preview at Simon & Schuster. I just dropped a link in the chat, so if you haven't had a chance to register, please be sure to do so. Next slide. So next up, Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr, who I'm sure needs no introduction. So this book is actually dedicated to librarians then, now, and in the years to come. And this is really this beautiful, immersive novel about all of these children on the cusp of adulthood. And so there are various different timelines across history. So you have 2 children in Constantinople, you have a child in the future on a spaceship, and they're all connected through this one singular text, Cloud Cuckoo Land. I don't want to give too much away about the plot, but this book is just masterful. It's beautiful. It's emotional. It's life affirming. Everyone at SNS is just obsessed with it. And I'm so excited for you all to read it. It goes on sale September 28th, and the Library Reads voting deadline is August 1st. Next slide. Smile, the Story of a Face by Sarah Rule. With a play opening on Broadway and every reason to smile, Sarah Rule has just survived a high-risk pregnancy when she discovers the left side of her face is completely paralyzed. She is assured that 90% of Bell's palsy's patients experience a full recovery and spontaneous improvement, like her own mother and Angelina Jolie. But Sarah is in the unlucky 10%, so she begins an intense, decade-long search for a cure while simultaneously grappling with the reality of her new face. Although it is her own, it is one that is incapable of demonstrating her true feelings and intentions. So this book obviously deals with a very heavy subject, but Sarah brings a lot of levity and warmth to it as well. And it's ultimately about persevering in the face of adversity. Sorry about the link. I will resend it in just a second. Okay, next slide. So the last title for you today is A Little Hope by Ethan Joella. So this book is about a group of characters that are all experiencing grief in a small town in Connecticut. So a husband betrays his wife, a son is struggling with addiction, a widow misses her spouse, and a young father is diagnosed with cancer. So to be totally honest, I read this book at the end of last year. The pandemic was surging, and I was honestly in a bit of a dark place. I was very sad. And so I wanted to read something to cheer me up. I tried rom-coms, I tried comedian memoirs. Nothing worked until I read this book, which I know sounds a bit weird. But when you read this book, you see what these characters go through. You see the grief that they experience and how they find a way to move on and connect with their community. And it just was the most life-affirming book I've ever read. And I just really think that this is the kind of book that so many people really need right now. Please read it. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. I just love it so much. It goes on sale November 2nd, and the Library Reads voting deadline is October 1st. And then before I let you go, next slide, please be sure to check out our resources, our book drop with our seasonal brochure, and our upcoming virtual events, our Books Like Us program, and our book club favorites program as well. Again, my name is Rachel Berquist. I'm going to go ahead and resend that link. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. That is it for us. This is the end of our presentation today. We hope that you saw some books that you really liked. We really thank you for joining us. Please feel free to reach out to everybody with questions, requests. We will try to do whatever we can to accommodate those. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Hope you all enjoy your summers. Take care.